I've already made several videos on this car when it wasn't finished, but now it is finished, and the way I see it, this car turned out to be well balanced. It has good handling, and it's moderately powerful for urban driving. And now I'm gonna show you in detail what we've got. The engine here is, we'll call it the M50 engine. The lower part here is from a non-Vanos M50 B25, the cylinder head is from M52, the intake shaft is from M54 B30, the intake shaft is on the exhaust. The rest of the engine wasn't modified in any way. The manifold was welded by the owner. His name is Sasha, by the way. So Sasha and I were trying to put this turbocharger with trembling hands. We were trying to put the ventilation with a duct tape. We were having a hard time trying to weld it all together. We spent 2 days on fiddling with all that. These are M52 manifolds inverted, and we welded the pipes. We got them from the plumbing store. There's a 63mm downpipe, it goes down to here to the transmission, and then it goes to the 55mm double exhaust pipe. M50 turbocharger. My friend had a great experience of installing it on a Mercedes 190. I really liked it on Mercedes, so I recommended that Sasha install it here. We were blowing 1 bar, and in the end it started losing momentum. And now you're gonna see the result that we got on the dyno. I'm about to show you the torque and the RPM curve. Yesterday when I tested the car, I measured 100-150, and judging by the injector's load, I could see that we're not going above 300 horsepower. And our pie-in-the-sky dream that we'll reach 350 horsepower with this turbocharger has been shattered. On the dyno we've got 288 horsepower and 453 RPM. The chart looks fantastic, the charger blows, and at 1 bar, we got somewhere between 2900 and 2850. Here at 1 bar, we have 5000 RPM. From 5000 RPM, it goes smoothly to 0.6 by the cutoff. The power, despite the fact that we have 288 HP, it's not the peak, but the RPM is around 4200, 6000. And almost at every point, we see 280 HP, and it's supposed to drive very well. The guys at the dyno checked it out, they said it's just like on a civilian car. It has reduced lows so that it doesn't tow, and the highs allow the car to drive fast. And here's why we couldn't get more power. The problem is that there's a jam in the hot part. So now we have 0.6 bar on top, and we see this chart. If you blow from 0.8, it drops even lower. The turbocharger is not getting any efficiency. I mean, there's no extra power. So we've got a problem with either the exhaust or the hot part of the turbocharger. And the boys at the dyno said that this car has a pre-facelift turbocharger, which has a really small hot part. But if we put a facelift turbocharger, which is equipped with an electronic actuator, we'll be able to get a little more power out of it. But we shouldn't focus on numbers, because numbers are just numbers. You see them, they're on paper, they're in your head, but the most important thing is emotions, which this car evokes. Even with its 288 HP, it shows an insane performance. I think marketers would call this engine elastic because even when you're driving in 4th gear somewhere in a busy street, you step on the throttle and she starts accelerating smoothly and gently. In general, it's a cool car, not some junk car, which you know, like an E30, which is rotten and you get in there, it drives badly and the sound is terrible. You got the idea. This car is different. You can drive at a speed of 200 kilometers per hour and you can steer with one hand. But what impresses me the most is how powerful this engine is. When you're just driving along the street, you're pressing the gas pedal and there you go! You're accelerating really fast. Then you switch the gear and you continue accelerating. That one makes you smile. The most essential thing that made me fall for this car is the approach, meticulousness, and love with which everything is done here. The owner invested somewhere around $1,700 in this car. It's not that much. If you watched previous videos on this channel, you could see that people put $10,000 and $15,000 in their cars. But here it looks like the owner put at least 10 grand in it. I mean, no one can do it at the service station for any money. I mean, with such care and dedication so that every single mount is painted, perfectly matched and with clamps everywhere, no money can buy that. All this is just a passion for the car and it's worth of respect. The owner did a magnificent job. When you open the hood, you're not gonna find a single issue. She changes lanes perfectly. I feel like George Tivzadze in the streets of Tbilisi. Actually, he had an E34, and the thing I don't like here is it has low clearance. If you miss a bit in the road, you'll get in trouble. There's a protection plate that protects the pallet actually, but on a BMW E30 M50 engine, it's installed in a way that the subframe is behind the pallet. And if you hit a pothole, the first thing that gets destroyed is the pallet. And Sasha experienced such a situation, and that's why he installed such a thick protection there, which is very durable. And going over the potholes doesn't pose serious threat. According to the manufacturer, the valve cover should be covered with a plastic plug, but since it melts due to the turbocharger, it was removed. Under this plug, there are hidden VAG ignition coils, and the owner made his own cover with such stylish stripes. Yeah, matching the original, and he covered the coils so that they are less exposed to heat from the turbocharger. Well, that's just amazing! He paid attention to every minute detail. He spent hours doing all this. That's just amazing. Even if you look at this hose, it means that the owner thought about the best way to install it here so that it looks aesthetically pleasing, so that everything looks beautiful. He did a marvelous job, and it's a really rare thing to see anything like this. So here's the deal. When you let off the throttle and when you hit the throttle, it starts to lean sideways. The car feels a bit loose. It's hanging like this. I can't figure out if it's the rear suspension or there's an issue with the rear beam or maybe silent blocks. I'm not sure exactly. Basically, it has a good handling like a huge go-kart, but this twitching when you're driving on a curve at a high speed is a bit annoying. Basically, the car has that effect that Sasha and I wanted to achieve. It feels very cool when we have 2,500 reps here. You drive the car at 60 kilometers per hour in the city, and you press the throttle, and you can easily overtake anyone. Look at this. And once again, the owner bothered to find black pipes because some blue silicone stuff under the hood, it looks weird, and it doesn't make the car look authentic. And this car, by the way, is from 1989, and it can already be considered as a vintage car. And it doesn't make sense to put blue pipes here when there's such a beauty under the hood. And here's another interesting point. The battery wasn't moved to the trunk. The battery here is gray, and it doesn't match all other parts. But the owner found this black cover in the catalog from some fresh car, which fits in perfectly, covering this gray spot in the corner. And now it looks absolutely amazing. The engine control unit here is from a Subaru, which is usually mounted on their intercooler. The owner took a 10mm flange, welded it into the pipe, and put the blow-off valve. Speaking of the fuel system, the injectors here are from the M52 B25 engine in green. According to the manufacturer, they have 160 cubic centimeters, but they're cut down to 340 cubic centimeters. They work perfectly well here. Also, there's a Walbro 255 fuel pump. The owner bought it for $100. Actually, we wanted to save money and install an M57 engine from BMW E60. There was also a 255-liter fuel pump, but it didn't fit here. And here's why. There's a narrow bulb. The pump is bigger, so it can be installed. We had to buy a small Walbro pump, and we also had a big voltage drop, meaning there was 12 volts on the battery. The pump turns on with 10 volts. We had to put a thick wire from the battery right through the relay to replace the native wiring. But in general, we fixed this problem. I mean, it's the issue of all old cars, like E30, E36, and so on. There you have to rearrange the wires when you're putting a bigger pump. And speaking of other little things, originally there was a quick disconnect on this turbocharger. The owner once again bothered to carve an adapter that is inserted here. It's in the rubber band and it's mounted here with a screw, and then he welded the adapter to the pipe, which goes down to the filter. That's really impressive. Since this is a city car, it meets the requirements of a city car. We decided not to bother with the clutch with two plates, as it adds some stiffness, so there should not be so much power to make a double plate. And the clutch cover was taken from an M57 engine, and we have a 240 dual-mass flywheel. The pedal is very soft, it feels great, it's like driving a normal factory car in the city. And judging by the chart, the clutch is already holding 450 torque. And if these 450 torque were still on top, there would be 450 horsepower, it would hold it. And there's no need to put this twin-plate clutch, at least in our case. If we installed them, the car would lose comfort in the city driving, when the soft clutch is doing amazing. It's doing its job perfectly. There were a lot of modifications. All wheels are 5 lug wheels. In order to put 5 bolts, you need to install a wheel hub from BMW E36 in the front. When you put the hub from BMW E36, the wheel will go backwards. To solve this problem, some people bend levers. Someone buys expensive levers, already modified, but they're mostly used for drifting. I think we didn't find them for stock cars. The owner, because he's an engineer and likes to draw, designed his own lever, which is in operation for 2 seasons already, and he also adjusted the caster settings perfectly. In other words, the wheel and the arch is straight, all the angles are ideal. Here we have TA Technics control coil springs, but the upper strut mounts the owner made by himself. It was possible to buy them, he saved about $100 probably, but he just wanted to do it by himself. So, these strut mounts are developed by the owner with a special equipment, which allows to carry out the work like that. The control coil spring adjusts the alignment. The alignment is adjusted to be able to drive in a circle, so there's about 2.5 or 3 degrees in the front. That's pretty decent. And speaking of the rear suspension, the levers are from BMW E36 Compact. They allow to use 5 lug wheels, and the shock absorbers are from a Land Cruiser. The rear differential is 188mm, but now we installed 168mm for drifting and to measure the speed from 0 to 100 km per hour. Alrighty, let's now test the acceleration. Now we'll go from 0 to 100, it needs 3 gears for that. And by the way, we've cheated a little bit, we installed the differential block to have the best time, so let's try it this way. First test, 563, it was a bad start, the car started slipping when shifting. Let's keep rolling. Let's blow the cooler a little bit, I hope it's gonna add a little bit of power. There we go. We're all set. Oh, 539. 539, that's better, much better, but we need low 5 sec. Okay, let's check it this time. 516! 516! I'm gonna do it less than 5 seconds one day. That's decent. That's already a pretty good result, actually. The RS4 is doing amazing, of course. I'm pretty surprised. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna show you the perfect start. Nah, that wasn't perfect start. Look at that! This time is perfect, guys. Stuck a little bit with switching to third. Look at this! 4.98! 4.98! That's hot! Let's keep going, guys. Let's roll! So, Sasha, he's the owner of the car. Listen, I think the differential axle is f***ed up. I knew this was gonna happen. Honestly, I saw it coming. I was sure it's gonna happen much faster. I didn't think it could happen. And how did it happen? Are we recording? Yeah. And what the hell was that? Don't do that again, okay? Okay, I'm sorry. We were driving from that garage, I hit the throttle, hit the clutch, and then it just banged, and that's it? Well, we're lucky that the car didn't stall there. In any case, we're lucky that the differential axle is not broken after that. You've owned it for 8 years. You've had strokers before, you installed different shafts and so on. How did you come to installing a turbocharger? Back in the day when this whole thing first started, everyone thought a stroker was the coolest thing in the world. Better than a V8? It's better than a V8 because the V8 is huge, it's heavy, you have to build a stroker, and it's not that simple. So I was driving like that for a while, yeah, it was fun, but then someone brought me a turbocharger and I installed it and there we go. So I decided that the stroker is already irrelevant. So now it doesn't make any sense to focus on it. I just don't feel like doing it anymore. And what's the reason of your choosing a turbocharger? Did your mindset change, or is just the fact that our society is ready for turbo cars? The society were getting more interested in turbo, and I kind of followed the example. I was inspired by those guys who installed turbochargers in their cars. Was it your first experience? Yeah. The biggest challenge you faced in the installation process? Intercooler, I guess. Hiding the intercooler is kind of a challenge. So, welding the manifold, putting the charger in there, and all that stuff is just no big deal, right? Yeah, well, speaking of the intercooler, since I couldn't do TIG welding, I had to literally mount it on tape, get to the guy, it was tricky for me. And I've got a regular welder, so we made all that in just a day. The intake line from the turbocharger to the throttle is made with 63mm pipe. The cooler is 550 by 180 by 63. This is the maximum size that could be fitted without sewing the car. There's no cooler blow either. There's one slot that barely blows through. There are also air conditioning plates. BMWs with air conditioning had them. There would have been 2 slots, and ideally the owner should find that plate and install it here. The fan from the BMW E34, it barely fits without touching the air conditioning. There are issues with cooling, but again, it's a city car. The cooler is hidden as much as possible, everything looks as beautiful as possible, and you have to make such sacrifices to make it look good. What else do we got here? What about other difficulties that you encountered when installing the turbocharger? Maybe there was something you didn't know before? Tell me about your impressions. About the emotions? You switched to the turbocharger. So, here how it was in the stroker. It felt like a Honda, I suppose. I'm driving, let's say, if I have 2.5 or 3000 RPM, I press the throttle. Even when I'm driving in third gear, there's no power. And only when there's 4500 RPM, the power shows up and the car can drive fast. But with this small turbocharger, you got 2500 RPM and there you go. There's enough power. You're driving really fast. It feels like a diesel. Diesel power. That's right. So, what are you planning to do with this car next? I don't know, I guess I'll be driving. I want to race with her. There are local races, I'm gonna check her capabilities there, see if I like all that, or if that will not be enough, I'll install a bigger turbocharger. There's not much to say about the interior, it can be defined in a single phrase, good condition. Among the features is the M-Tech steering wheel. I think it's the M-Tech 2, a gear shift knob, front power windows, sunroof, and the seat from a BMW E36. The owner had a brilliant idea and he bought a racing seat and 6-point harnesses belts. Of course, we'll ask him why, because as the car is supposed to be a city car for comfortable driving and all that stuff, but maybe he has some long-term plans. And he also wants to install a boost gauge here. He told me that it was his childhood dream to install such a gauge in his car, although in fact there's no need to have it here. I was talking about the interior, the racing seat and the belts you want to install here. The message of the video was that this is a city car. It is. Okay, but why would you want a racing seats in a car and 6-point harnesses belts? Well, you know, it just looks flashy, I don't know. I just like it. I've had this dream since I was a kid or something. I want to drive a car that can drive in the city and can race at the same time. So, you realize the dream. What's next? You're gonna enjoy it and that's it? No, you can get to the next level, experimenting with suspensions and turbochargers. I mean, you can do a lot of stuff with E30. So it's something like a Lego toy for you. This car is my self-fulfillment. So look, here's Sasha and that's his car. As you can see, they're both in black. Sasha has silver Snickers, the car has silver rims. They're alike. I've shown you the car from the inside, let's have a look at the exterior. There are some things that need to be fixed, there are some issues that require a lot of time, but in general, if you get to the car like this, you look at her and think, man, this is a cool E30, it looks really cool. I mean, the shadow line, she's gray-black, basically it's not rotten, and it's worthy of respect. In any case, the car looks sharp, and it's hard to argue with this. By the way, I forgot to mention that all this is controlled by the engine control unit January 5.1. The tires are Hankook RS4. I think it's one of those top-end tires. They're not very expensive. Michelin Pilot Sport is better, of course, but these are also nice. These tires give the car some grip during acceleration. They help the car not to go off track, and Sasha can show some performance.
Bang boogie, up jumps the boogie. Ghetto fuckers got the boogie, and the show is clean. That's right. That's right. Bang bang boogie, up jumps the boogie. Ghetto fuckers got the rhythm in the boogie to beat. Bang boogie, up jumps the boogie. Ghetto fuckers got the boogie, and the show is clean.
I can't enjoy my shawarma for 15 minutes already. I'm interrupted by some local, slightly drunk people who came out of the store. First, we were interrupted by some auto trader who told us that he had 68 BMWs, and then some local guy showed us a very beautiful Volvo, which is parked over there in the parking lot, and said, we can really appreciate that car. That guy was in a world of his own, so we had a funny conversation. You know what all these guys have in common? They both were drinking beer. Today I hit the throttle on the way to the garage, and that was really exciting. I liked it a lot. I mean, for real, there's an acceleration feeling. You change lanes, and that's cool. I even compared it to a motorcycle. And I realized that driving the E30 was more fun than riding a motorcycle. Obviously, I don't drive bikes like a lunatic. Wheelie is not my thing actually, but driving E30 feels much better than any motorcycle. We were driving together actually. Yeah, I remember that. You talked about some sort of huge experience you got when you built the turbo. It's not a huge experience, it's just experience. What does that mean? That means that, I don't know, you look at a certain part now and you already understand how to install it somewhere, how to make it look beautiful. I didn't have that before. I can compare it to when you ride a bicycle as a child on one street, then on another street, on the third street, and then you go from the second street to the third street, and you realize, wow, I've been there before, I know where it is. It's like the whole puzzle comes together. Yeah, well, back in the day I was busy fixing something in the car. I can't really say I did it carelessly, but I wasn't that meticulous. And now this year I started thinking that I wanted to upgrade my car so that other people would appreciate it. I just want to make something good out of it, and I wanted people to recognize me. And what can you say to our viewers who, just like you, are dreaming of creating a turbocharged car? Even if you don't have money, go ahead, just try it. Find options. You better build your car and drive it at the same time. Just building doesn't work, but building and driving works. You'll get a ton of emotions, so go ahead and fulfill your dream. You just gotta start doing something and everything will come.
That's right. Bang, bang, boogie, up jumps the boogie. Ghetto funk has got the rhythm in the boogie to beat. Bang, boogie, up jumps the boogie. Ghetto funk has got the boogie, and the show is clean.
Guys, thank you for watching this video until the end. I really hope you liked it. We tried very hard, but the owner tried even harder to build such a car. He put a lot of effort, love, and time into this car. And I'm not gonna talk about money because, well, it's not such a big budget, but eventually you're gonna get such a beauty. Time is the most valuable thing we have. Maybe it sounds cliche, your time and love invested in the car is reflected in its appearance, in its dynamics, in its steering, in everything I told you about today. So, once again, subscribe to the channel, put your likes and write in the comments if you like the car. Thank you guys for watching and bye.